Welcome to the Beautifully Aligned podcast. My name is Lynn Ford, and I am a certified life coach. If you are looking to become more aligned in life, from your style to wellness to mindset to your relationships to success, then you have come to the right place. My goal for this podcast is to guide you in recognizing the boundless potential within you, empowering you to achieve anything that you aspire to be, do, or have. Thank you so much for being here today. Now, let's get into the show. Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. So happy that you are here today. Today's topic is a big one, and it's actually two topics kind of sort of rolled into one, and that is on fear and limiting beliefs. They can be intertwined. They can be worked on in very similar ways, which is why I'm kind of covering both. This topic came up for me because it is something that I'm always working on it, but it has come up a lot for me around work and marketing specifically. And I did share a little bit, I can't remember if it was last week's episode or the previous episode where I kind of touched on that, but my fears and my limiting beliefs have been preventing me from marketing and being seen and putting myself out there. I'm going to go off on a little tangent because I want to share. Maybe you can relate in some way, shape, or form. So before I started this podcast and before I even got my coaching certification and started coaching, I was a blogger. I was mainly in the lifestyle blogging space. Maybe you followed me from there here. Thank you so much if you did. And at that time, I was also working a 9-to-5 job, and I did everything in my power to hide my blog, my Instagram, like all my socials, everything from my work, like from my 9-to-5 job. I would go to the greatest lengths. I'm going to get super like honest and vulnerable here and just stream of consciousness. Okay, so I would go as far as to change I think it's like the VPN or something. Yeah, VPN. So I would switch out the VPN. There's like a whole service where you can do this for security purposes, where I would switch that out anytime I went onto LinkedIn or Facebook, like the business side of Facebook, because it tracks like your computer or your device, if you're on your phone, whatever, tracks where you are in relation to who you're interacting. And it's a whole thing. It's this whole network, and it's creepy. And I don't fully understand it. But I did know that based on your location specifically, it knows who you're interacting with based on your VPN. So I would go as far as to switch my VPN when I was logging into LinkedIn, because I think it was my first and middle name on LinkedIn, to network with people like outside of my 9-to-5 job. It was a whole thing. Like the lengths that I went to hide it was crazy. And it was partially due to, not partially, mainly due to fear. I did not want to be found out. I didn't want to deal with someone finding my stuff. And some of it was borderline inappropriate. I talked a lot about wellness, sometimes sexual wellness. And I just felt weird having the people I worked with that were not my vibe at all finding it. So I went to great lengths to hide it. Okay, so that's that. Now, it's not so much, I'm not in that job anymore, but it's not that, but it is kind of a fear of being seen. So that has led me to not being as consistent as I would like with certain marketing activities, like being present on Instagram and connecting with you if you follow me there. And bottom line, being seen. So those are some fears and a limiting belief around being seen that I am smashing. And lately on my Instagram stories specifically, I've been sharing a lot of like daily life stuff, life with my daughter, and that's all fun. And I'm going to continue to do that. But I am also going to continue to smash that limiting belief, those fears around being seen in what I have to offer you, what I have to offer to women. And I'm about to go full on alien. You're going to see me now. So if you're listening or watching this on YouTube in real time in April 2024, things are about to change. And this is me holding myself accountable too, because I'm saying it. So today's episode is inspired on that. I also work with clients who have limiting beliefs. I have not worked with one person who does not have any fears, who does not have any limiting beliefs. And I work with many high achievers, people who are very, very successful. They have fears and limiting beliefs. So don't feel like you are just the odd one out or you have some big problem that nobody else has. There are so many people who have fears, who have limiting beliefs, but we can create positive change by busting through them. And today I'm going to give you some tips on how to do that. So first things first, where do fears and limiting beliefs come from? Usually, I'm saying typically, usually, many of your fears and limiting beliefs come from your past, from your childhood. From ages 0 to 7, your brain waves, I think it's called theta, they're in theta brainwave state. So it's like this blissful, imaginative, positive state. But when our caregivers, when those above us, teachers, parents, family members, whatever, imprint on us or program us, we start to take on these fears and limiting beliefs that are not ours. But I do want to say that it's not all fears and limiting beliefs come from childhood. They can also come from being a teenager, events that have happened to you as an adult, certain traumas that happen to us. But childhood is a really big one. So fears and limiting beliefs can come from so many places, and it's important to understand that it's not your fault. Usually somebody else has imprinted or programmed this fear or limiting belief onto you, and you've adopted it. And then what can happen is we can either have intrusive thoughts and repetitive patterns of negative thinking. I did do an episode on negative self-talk a while back. You can go ahead and listen to that. I provide a lot of tips in that on how to overcome negative self-talk, which is tied to fears and limiting beliefs. But these intrusive thoughts can happen where it's basically a fear or a limiting belief just on loop in your mind. And your RAS, your reticular activating system, which recognizes patterns, will pick up on it and just keep repeating that negative belief, limiting belief, fear, and then you start to believe it, and then you become that limiting belief. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, which we do not want. It can manifest itself physically, anxiety, depression, all the things that we don't want. I have personally experienced intrusive thoughts. I have experienced anxiety, and I went to therapy for anxiety. And I just want to say, and I'm not saying this because I am a certified life coach, but I did years of therapy around anxiety, and my anxiety manifested physically. Like I felt physically sick. It was very scary. I had panic attacks. And it wasn't until I was coached and learned more about coaching and the coaching practice and went through the experience myself that I realized coaching was so much more expansive. I got over the anxiety. And maybe I'll talk about that in another episode. Let me know if you want to hear that. So many people struggle with anxiety. It can be debilitating. And I got over it. I mean, I still have little anxieties here and there, but nothing like what I experienced before. And yes, therapy can be lovely. There were certain parts of it that I loved, but coaching, number one, it was faster. Like it was a faster recovery for me from experiencing the anxiety. I got the tools. I was more proactive to get over it. I was given the tools. I was pushed to focus on the future, not digging into the past. So a little note on that is in therapy, we're encouraged to dig through our past and discover why something happened and just really make it more tangible for understanding why. Like, why did this happen? Let's go back and dig and rehash the situation or the experience, which is fine. And we do that sometimes in coaching. But coaching is more future focused and it holds you accountable. And I do want to say, I've just noticed this in talking to people, other coaches, and with my clients, is that when you are asked about your past, sometimes we have fragmented memory based on traumas that we've had, or we just can't remember when we were 3 years old, something that happened. So our brain kind of tries to piece it together for us, or we're remembering based on a family member's recollection, and it's just not 100% accurate. That is why I don't like the idea of fully just focusing on the past to fix a problem. Yes, it's important to go back sometimes. There are times where it is appropriate to discuss what has happened. Absolutely. And we do that in coaching, but we don't stay there. It's very future focused. So I just wanted to say that. And all of that to say that how you see your future self is how you are going to behave. It's going to impact your thoughts. It's going to impact your behaviors. It's going to impact your future self and what happens in your life, hopefully in the most positive possible direction. When I was going through my life coaching certification program, I had an instructor who said, "Don't believe everything you think." And I love that quote so much. He said that when we were focusing on challenging limiting beliefs, tools on how to do that. And I just love that. So wanted to share that. Don't believe everything that you think. Let me share these stats with you. So we have 60,000-ish thoughts a day in our mind. That's a lot. 80% of those are negative. We've talked on this podcast before about how our brain tries to keep us safe. And by keeping us safe, it can skew negative. Oh, there's a lion over there. I better be scared. I better run away. I better think the worst. And then we spiral, right? Even though there's no lion there. So 80% of those thoughts are negative, which sucks. And 95% of the thoughts are the same thoughts that we had yesterday. So that means that if we are not actively reprogramming the way that we think, 95% of our thoughts are negative. Let that sink in for a second. So I'm going to share my biggest tip on smashing those fears, smashing those limiting beliefs. So I talked about intrusive thoughts a little bit. With intrusive thoughts, they're on this loop. And sometimes we can taunt ourselves like, oh, let's think about this. And then our mind goes right back to whatever it was we were thinking about that we don't want to be thinking about, or we taunt ourselves and say, I'm not going to think about it, but then we're thinking about it. And what that does is, it creates this intrusive thought pattern, but it also spikes our cortisol, which is our stress hormone, creates anxiety, creates maybe OCD in some situations. So it's just this loop that is not at all healthy. It's a loop. What we want to do is the same with any type of negative thought, any type of behavior. The more that we, in that case, taunt it, the more it's going to come up, or the more we try not to think about it, we think about it, right? So what you're going to do is put a positive spin on it. What do I mean by that? You're going to devalue whatever that limiting belief is, whatever that fear or lie you're telling yourself about yourself is, you're going to devalue it. Let me give you some really tangible examples. The first one is more of an analogy. So let's say that every morning for breakfast, you have a Granny Smith apple. Love me a Granny Smith apple. I love the sour apples. Okay. So let's say you have this apple because you've always held the belief that apples are healthy and you need to be eating an apple every day for breakfast. But then you learn otherwise from whatever, an article you read or your doctor tells you that apples are horrendous for your health and you should not be eating them for breakfast. This is not true. I'm just using this as an example. So then you refuse to buy apples, you refuse to eat them, it's a done deal, whatever. You replace it with a banana in the morning. That's kind of boring, right? Okay, I replaced it with the banana. I'm good. I'm done. So now for breakfast, you're eating bananas instead of apples based on the information you got from the article or your doctor or whatever. So that new information that you got about the apples devalues the old information where you thought they were healthy before. It's done. It's boring, but it is now your new belief system. Do that with your beliefs. That is the analogy. I love that analogy so much. Let's talk about one that's a little bit more relevant, if you will. So let's say that you have a limiting belief around feeling like you are terrible at math, which stems from a limiting belief that you are just not smart. So to flip that around, think about saying that, or somebody saying that, not you saying that, but think about somebody saying that to your child, if you have a child. Or think about somebody saying that to somebody that you know. Oh, you're not smart. You're terrible at math. You're so stupid. Oh my gosh. You would probably be flabbergasted and be like, no, absolutely not. That is not true. We don't do that for ourselves. Instead, we take on the shame and the cycle and the intrusive thoughts, and we start to believe it's true. So these limiting beliefs and these fears and these lies that we tell ourselves, they are our conditioning. And then we're conditioned towards the struggle or the excitement or the drama or the victim mindset that comes along with these things. And we can put ourselves down, and then we have the guilt and the shame, and then we can self-medicate, and we chase habits just to feel good. And it's this whole spiral. And then we create evidence based on these beliefs that we have, and then that manifests into the life that we are experiencing now. So you can see how huge of an impact fears and limiting beliefs can have on our lives. One more tip that I'm going to give you is to do parts work. This is best done with a coach or a therapist who is trained in internal family systems or in parts work. But a good question to ask yourself if you're just starting to notice these lies you're telling yourself or the fears that come up constantly or anxiety or a repeating limiting belief is to ask, to basically name the two different parts of you, the fear part and the part that is not fearful, or the limiting belief part and the part that believes the opposite is true, is to ask both parts what they need from the other. So let's just say part A and part B. So part A is I'm not smart enough. And part B is I am a genius. Okay, just to make it easy. So what does part A need from part B? You'll be surprised what comes up. What does part B need from part A? And you'll start going down this path in unraveling where this limiting belief came from. What does it need? Allowing yourself to absorb that and then figure out a path forward. So that is just, that's not one question. I was going to say that's just one question, but it's two questions is what does part A need from part B? What does part B need from part A? You can name them whatever you want based on your particular situation. So that is a huge tip that I have for you. So just to recap, how can we break free of these fears, these limiting beliefs? How can we transcend past them, live our best, badass, extraordinary lives? Number one, we have to be aware that it's even a problem, right? We have to be aware that our minds are maybe skewing more negative, which is quote unquote normal, but it's not what many of us want, right? So we have to reprogram. That first comes with the awareness. And number two is be around the right people. I touched on this a little bit. As kids, we can't really control who we are around most times, but as adults, we can. And if somebody is putting you down, if somebody is speaking poorly to you, down to you, whatever, get them out of your life. Be around the right people who lift you up. So number one, awareness is everything. It is key. Be around the right people. Devalue those beliefs that you have. Use that example that I shared with you about the apple and the banana. And then parts work and getting help. So with parts work, I highly recommend working with a coach or a therapist, like I said, who is trained in internal family systems or parts work. And everyone has their own personal program. So it's having that help, professional help from a certified coach or a therapist, getting that help, addressing it from the beginning and building systems to break yourself free of it for good and not going back to those intrusive thoughts, or even getting yourself to an upper limit where you get somewhere and then you get stuck and you fall back down and you self-sabotage. So getting that professional help from a coach or a therapist to surpass that upper limit where you can stop self-sabotaging, to break free of those limiting beliefs, it is life-changing. I'm telling you from personal experience, and I don't share anything that I haven't personally experienced or experienced with my clients. So highly recommend. And that is all I have for you today. If you enjoyed this episode, I would be so grateful if you would leave me a 5-star rating. It doesn't take that long, like 5 seconds. And with that, I will chat with you next week. Bye.